Smyrna Town Council meeting, December 15th.
Please stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing, and as we have a moment of silence, let us remember those families that were adversely affected by the violence over the weekend from LA to Sydney, Australia, and of course to Providence, Rhode Island. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Roll call, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Councilman Drew,
Here.
Mayor Gott,
Here,
Councilman Johnson,
Here.
Councilman Miles, Councilman Olson,
Here.
Councilman Pope,
Here.
and Vice Mayor Dr. Upshur.
present.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, item 4, additions or deletions to the published agenda, which is before you. Do we have any additions or deletions? And if not, do we accept the published agenda? Do we have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept the published agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion is carried to accept the agenda.
Item 5, consent agenda. Letter A, council meeting minutes from December 1st, 2025. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes from December 1st?
Make a motion to accept the minutes from December 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion is carried to accept the minutes from December 1st.
Thank you. Item 6, non-agenda items. Mayor and council members.
I have it fast. I'll go first. I'll make it real quick. We have caroling on the square, which was scheduled for Sunday. We moved it due to the 19-degree temperatures outside. We moved it to Friday, which was the day of least contention with other activities and events. We have worked with Just Serve, who is going to donate food for us. Our goal was to reach 1,000 pounds of food to donate to the ministerium for the holidays. It looks like due to the predicted weather, we're going to have to cancel that event. I haven't run this by our illustrious town manager yet. Or chief. However, if we are not able to have it on Friday, I was thinking maybe we could move it to March and do a Happy Birthday USA, same type of concept with the karaoke out there and bring in the coffee truck and some other stuff going on. So we won't lose the activity. We just lose the holiday event. But on the 21st, Christmas caroling is taking place in front of the First Presbyterian Church, between the First Presbyterian Church and the firehouse. That is going on. The last few weeks have been a real whirlwind with activities and events and community opportunities. Pearl Harbor Day was a tremendous success. And of the pictures that I have Dean up on top of the fire truck raising the American flag up there, which is pretty cool. My granddaughter thought that was like the end all, that the guy on the fire truck waved to her. The event went off without a hitch. And Alvin's going to do the national anthem for us next year, December 7th at 11 o'clock in the morning. Locked, loaded, and security. The firehouse was kind enough to invite me to the annual Christmas party over the weekend. And that was a very nice event. It was the first time I've ever gone. They only invite a limited number of people, and the mayor was one of the ones. That was a true honor. I think that is it. I do want to wish everyone a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas, because this will be the last time that we possibly see each other between now and the holidays. Unless, of course, you work right here in town hall. Where I've left my presence multiple times between now and then, or the police stations. Vice Mayor? Oh, we had the Christmas parade too. And Tractor Supply was good enough to donate salt chip bales. They're like hay bales, but they're protected so they didn't get wet. And we had a windmill that once we got it together, we realized the windmill was probably higher than the electric lines in Clayton and we couldn't use it in the parade. But we did go ahead and use their 6-foot chicken. And it was just very simple. It was strung lights on a big trailer that allowed a whole bunch of us to come together as one and just have a nice little country Christmas. So it was very nice. I think that's it for me.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you to our town staff for an amazing year. Thank you very much. I want to talk about the Christmas parade as well. After the Christmas parade, we went over to Smyrna Diner and was able to sign some cards for our first responders, take some pictures with Santa Claus. That was really fun. On Friday, I had an opportunity to be with Delaware Futures at our library. It was their end of year event where all the counties come together with their young people and just pour into them. It was really a phenomenal event. Quite a few people that were not from Smyrna, maybe Lewis or what have you, were just very pleased with how our downtown looked. And just share some stories of what they knew of Smyrna. But again, just being able to pour into the young people is just a passion of mine. Also, just want to say that it is a holiday season coming up and that we just need to be mindful of those that might not be as fortunate as others and might not celebrate the holidays, and that this might not be a joyous season for them. So I encourage everyone to just check on your neighbors and check on your loved ones. Mental health, again, is something that is a passion of mine. And again, thank you to our staff. Thank you to all of our town members that come out for our meetings, and your voice. We hear you and we see you. Thank you.
Councilman Pope?
Well, thank you. I want to first thank the staff for everything that you guys do each and every day as we draw down to the end of the year. Hope that you have a wonderful holiday with your families, as well as our community members and constituents here in town. We had the privilege of actually attending an awards luncheon where one of our officers from Smyrna PD, I believe it was Officer Raleigh.
Detective Raleigh, yes, sir.
Dr. Raleigh, thank you. Doing fantastic work, received an award. He was one of, I believe, 5 officers that were recognized. And the cases that they worked on, one of which involved breaking up a potentially bad situation that could have happened on the campus of UD. These officers, day in and day out, are doing some amazing work. So I was very honored and privileged to attend so that we could be there to support, Officer Raleigh and Smyrna PD. So that anytime you see those guys and gals, please, just give them a thank you when you see them. They're doing a great job. And of course, we had our Christmas party at the firehouse on Saturday, which was well attended. So I just want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, and we will see you in 2026.
Councilman Johnson?
Real simple. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. See you next year.
Councilman Olson?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify from our last meeting that at no time did I ever promise to roll back the taxes in Smyrna, that I was going to do it myself or that it would be done. But I said that I would try to roll them back.
Councilman Drew?
Good evening, everyone. It was awesome to see you guys out here in this excellent weather. It is cold outside, so please bundle up. Happy holidays to everyone as well. Same sentiments to our Vice Mayor. Please check on your loved ones. Mental health is wealth. It was awesome to be in the cold at the Christmas parade. Everybody came out. It's amazing to see kids out there waving. So it was cool to see that. But thank you for being here. Thank you to the staff for all you did all this year. You guys mean a lot to us. So thank you.
George?
I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, and I'm gonna give a lot of my time to Jeremy, so he can put together this great presentation. Each of you has a copy of the financial statement for the month. So if there's any questions or anything with that, please feel free to reach out. Outside of that, we held our townwide Christmas party for staff. Everybody, thank you for coming out. I think I enjoyed. Sorry, I can see faces.
Say a word.
But there is a little gift for each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy holidays to everybody and looking forward to seeing everybody in the new year.
Chief
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
All right.
Barrett?
I would echo that also. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
All
And I'll wrap that up with this doesn't happen without all of you and without the amazing staff and without the council that we have. In 6 years, almost 7, this really is the best council that I have had the opportunity to work with. And we all get along. We all mesh together. We support each other. And just like when you're in a regular workplace, if you don't have that, this doesn't work. I'm very, very thankful for that. Along the journey, I've made some really great friends and we had some little pockets of success. But this really is successful. So thank you to all of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Item 7, old business, including discussion. Since there's nothing under that one, it takes us down to item 8, new business, including discussion and possible action on the following items. Presentation and discussion of the 2025 retail opportunity gap analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Every 5 years or so, we have contracted to be able to do what's called a retail retail gap analysis. And what this does is the technology gets better and better all the time. They use not only, it's a tool utilizing both census level data, but also more importantly, it uses our cell phone data and our credit card data to be able to tell us and be able to provide data to consulting firms in terms of the economic behavior of various communities and various demographic groups. And it's very good to be able to explain and to be able to project to you all in terms of what might be a perceived need in the community and an actual demand borne out by the purchasing power of the community. So to be able to lead this, we haven't done this since 2020. We did this as part of the DDD update. Rick Farrell has done for this in the past, and Rick is, for those of you that don't know Rick, some of you may who've been with council, Alvin and Tabby might know Rick. Rick is a consultant. He's worked decades in the retail field, managing shopping centers and different retail property management firms, up and down the East Coast and Mid-Atlantic area. He's very in tune with the retail sector. So I will turn it over to him for us to get started, and we'll tag team in being able to explain what the analysis says for what opportunities exist for our community.
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's really good to see some familiar faces. And let me just walk you through, as Jeremy said, this type of analysis is actually in big picture terms referred to as syndicated data, because it comes from an amalgam of different sources derived from different places. Some are actual numbers, some are derived numbers that are estimated based on trends and other market analyses and algorithms that go into the programs that come up with these numbers. The other type of research that you hear about is primary research, which is different than syndicated in that it's generated by an individual or an entity for a very specific purpose. Think like polls in political environments and so forth. But this is from a group called Claritas, which is a partner with Nielsen. You may have heard of them as the people that would find out what television ratings were. That's where their roots were from years ago. But Claritas spins a lot of this data, especially on the what they call the retail power market. So we look at that data specifically. For Smyrna, we actually looked at drive times because of the ease of access to this geography and a lot of Delaware that runs north-south on our major arteries. It's much, I think, more relevant to get a picture of geography relative to drive time, because that's our reality, as opposed to something like radii, where you just take a 1 or 3 or 5 mile swatch and look at the activity within that area. What we looked at were 3 different drive times from the center of downtown Smyrna, and we called that 1 North Main. And
So 10-minute drive time, just this is the map shown up here in terms of what a 10-minute drive time looks like from the 4 corners here in downtown. And it essentially goes all the way down to Garrison Lake on the south, almost to Cheswold, and to the north goes all the way up to
like
Eagles, that's Blackham Station, almost to Townsend.
That's right.
So you're talking about approximately a population of about 30,000. So if the town's population is just under 14,000, about 30,000 people within a drive time.
And then when you expand that to a 20-minute drive time, you hit different geographies. You get to the north, you get to like the C&D Canal area, and to the south, Dover Highlands area. And then when you go out to 30 minutes, you're really going as far north as Glasgow and as far south as like Milford Neck wildlife area. Just to give you a perspective about that. And the ease that we travel in that area is what's important, because it takes us to other markets and potential markets. So as Jeremy said, going out 10 minutes, you're capturing about 30,000, go out about 20 minutes, and that number bumps to over 120,000. Go out even further still to the 30-minute drive time, and you're over 250,000 in potential customers and population. Smyrna, by the way, after the last census, became essentially the state's center, geographic center of population, meaning essentially there's as many people to the north as there are to the south. So here's what I want to do. The retail market analysis looks at 2 primary data sets, and then it spits out a number. The data sets we look at are the demand for particular goods and services against the supply for particular goods and services. So we're looking at demand in the area of a 10-minute drive time from downtown. And that demand is basically based on consumer purchases from this area in those categories of goods and services. And we're looking
Of those 30,000 people,
of those 30,000.
that's how much 30,000 people is purchasing in retail products, almost $800 million on an annual basis.
And then we look at that number in relation to the supply. It's the supply, the seller of those goods and services in the same geography. And when we see that demand sometimes outpaces the supply, it means that there's a gap, an opportunity gap, and that's what this is referring to. Meaning that it's never a given that this is not a guarantee that if you brought those goods and service providers here that they would be successful. But when you're trying to make an intelligent approach to what is underserved in the area, it starts with this data. And then, of course, a business attraction strategy would be to focus on the goods and service providers that have a solid business plan, that have experience in the market and so forth. But it provides a really nice starting place to sort of vet your own thinking about what's needed. And I'll show you some other reasons or ways that we use this data for existing businesses. I want to give you a couple examples of both
Better vehicles.
when we find an opportunity gap and when we don't. You want to do automobiles?
Yeah, so think about what businesses are in town, okay? Smyrna is blessed to have a lot of auto dealerships compared to other communities, even a community like Middletown, we have a lot of car dealerships, both new car and old and new car. So if you look at there's for both new and used car dealerships, there's $138 million worth of car sales in new and used cars. And we're supplying about 113 million. So there's only 10 million out of almost 140. There's only a $10 million gap between what's being sold. And so people are generally shopping for cars here in Smyrna, okay? Or people from elsewhere are shopping for cars in Smyrna. And if you look at the numbers in red, look at recreational vehicle dealers, so RV dealers. So not surprisingly, those numbers are shown in red, meaning that we're actually selling more RVs than are demanded in our drive time area. And given what businesses we have in town, like Parkview RV, that's not surprising, right?
What that means is Parkview RV is actually importing a customer from the broader
elsewhere.
region.
From elsewhere.
So it's an attraction opportunity because it's a destination visit, because it supplies that it actually, the data supports their sign at the front of their business, which says Delaware's #1 RV dealer. Probably very true based on the data.
Based on brick and mortar retail stores.
Yes. Now there are some captured data sets for online and e-commerce activity, but that's not reflected here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So being in red is a good thing.
Being in red means that there's an oversupply of that particular item. And they use these are the net codes.
Yeah.
NAC
North American Industrial Classification System. Yeah, so don't confuse red with negative and bad.
Right.
It means there's a lot of things that when you start to drill down into this data, it can mean. Take an example that Jeremy and I have talked about outside of Smyrna. Everybody familiar with Johnny Janosic in Laurel? If you look at the supply of furniture in Laurel, it so outpaces the demand in the same area for that furniture because they're importing people maybe from North Carolina and coming up the Eastern Seaboard for big furniture visits. So they pull from a wide area. Does that mean that Laurel wouldn't find it useful to do a business attraction in the area of furniture? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on if it's a replica of Johnny Janosic, maybe that's not such a good idea. And they're not going to execute on that any better. But what if it were someone that was very narrowly and very specifically focused in recliners and went way deeper in selection than somebody that's going broad in a big format? That might be a very well hit ball from a business attraction standpoint, because the market is already responding to that category. Much like in Smyrna, if you were to have more RV or more auto, because there's such an auto and RV presence here and demand for it here that's coming in from other places, it probably would be very successful. This would support that. So that's how to look at this.
So for example, when you mentioned furniture, I'm thinking of like Bob's Furniture, how it was in Bear and now it's doing very well in Dover. Or Ashley Furniture as well, was doing very well in Bear and it's doing very well in Dover now.
Yeah. So in Smyrna, for instance, there's a demand of about $12.5 million for furniture on a yearly basis. But think of where can you buy furniture in Smyrna? Roses is probably the only place that you could get.
They sell furniture?
You could potentially get furniture. That's the only store that's going to sell.
So there is a secondhand furniture store right there by auto parts. And if you go in there, it's really good.
Oh, okay.
But does that get included in this if it's not specific?
Say it again.
Does would those statistics be included in this if it's not specific?
Business license, they should.
If they have a business license, again, as Jeremy said, they're
With their
grabbing this,
taxes.
they're grabbing it
With
from
tax
credit
reporting.
card data.
Okay,
A lot of the retail data, if you have a CVS card or a Walgreens card and you swipe that, or they ask you for that at the counter, they're basically, they know our age, they know our gender, they know what things we're buying, and that gets put into this giant pool of where this data comes from.
out of curiosity, do we own this tool or is this a tool that we?
We purchased the data, so we contracted with Rick and he runs the data at a specific set time.
Okay,
So it's a snapshot in time.
And we're going to show you in a moment that we've looked at this against the 2021 data that we ran a few years ago so that you can see what's changed in the market,
Okay.
because you actually have a baseline because you've done this before, which is really helpful.
Thank you for this data. I just have one quick question though, Rick, if you can help me with this. So looking at this, is this data also readily available? Say if I'm a big retailer and I'm possibly eyeing coming to the area, is this something that's readily available to them?
Yes, let's take that in a live situation. Smyrna had a very strong gap in 10, 20, and 30-minute drive times in the area of grocery. And I've heard over the years, many, many times, how Smyrna would like to see a branded grocer in the area closer and more convenient than leaving the area. A lot of these numbers tell the story of many of the Smyrna shoppers leaving the market to get some of the specific things they want. So why is it with a gap or opportunity in that category that we don't have that grocer knocking the door down, to get in?
But to your question, when somebody like Wawa or somebody, a national retailer, or they go through a commercial site selector, because most of the time it's not the actual retailer. Sometimes it is. We just had a pre-application meeting with a new retailer called 7 Brew Coffee. They'll be coming to town. It's a new type of Starbucks, perhaps, it's a drive-through coffee. I dealt directly with that company, but oftentimes I'm dealing with a commercial site selector. And those commercial site selectors are using data like this to narrow down which markets and which municipalities and communities to target.
So to answer your question, not only are they using this data, but they're refining it even more for their very specific and narrow purposes. So in the case of the grocery category, they will often come into the area and do their own proprietary market analysis beyond whatever we think we know. And it will be very specific to their expectations and minimal expectations for performance and bottom line in a market.
So I've seen, for instance, to give you a real world example. So there's another software called Placer. There's a lot of these software companies out there that are offering services. They work with shopping centers, like Simon's, who has the Dover Mall, for instance. They've given us demonstrations at the county on they can do what's called geofencing. And essentially they just draw an area around the parking lot of the shopping mall. And they set it for a certain time, and they collect using your cell phones and your credit cards. They can tell you who is going in there and how much they're spending in a particular day, and they can do that to be able to say whether or not there's a market for their particular store.
Another example is, I'd mentioned this in a prior conversation with Jeremy. I had an opportunity to help the city of Wilmington. They were looking for a grocer. We ended up going to Jansen's, which is a family-owned independent grocer in the Greenville area, sort of affluent, upscale place. The idea wasn't to bring the same grocery store that they ran in Greenville to Wilmington, but rather take a section of that grocery store, rather than 40,000 square feet, do a 10 to 15,000 square foot smaller version to cater to the burgeoning new population that Wilmington's getting with all of the Buccini Pollen new downtown millennial residents. So the idea was a little bit of convenience, a little bit of fresh grocery product, and real heavy on prepared foods. A lot of those young people get home after 5, don't want to cook, but they'll get something to go that can be prepared at home. And so they modeled that based on that concept through their own market analysis group. I think it was a soft cost that they incurred of about $15,000 just to determine if they should go further with the conversation or not. And just so you know how that one ended, it broke even. And the owners said, we don't want to work that hard to break even. We need it to do better than that. And so one of the things we tried to do was find additional profit centers that could go into the model to show a different outcome. And the one thing that showed the best outcome was allowing them to sell beer and wine like they do in PA, but we don't do that in Delaware. And that would take a legislative change, which was a heavy lift, and they moved on.
Okay.
So for grocery stores, I'll allow Rick to kind of go into the actual numbers. So for instance, that's a hot topic. Everybody wants to see a new grocery store. There's a demand for, right around $80 million worth of groceries that is purchased every year within a 10-minute drive time for Smyrna. And there's a demand, that's the demand. And there's only a supply of around 62 million. So that's a gap of around 18 million. So I'll allow you to explain, like, what is a 60,000 square foot grocery store? What does that actually mean in terms of demand? Like, what are they going to look at for a grocery?
Yeah. So a 60,000 foot store is basically an Acme. It can be a Wegmans is in that size as well. Those stores don't look at locations that, and depending on the retailer, there's none that will look at opportunities if they're not going to do $400 or $500 per square foot. So that might be a $25 million unit. So an $18 million gap doesn't get you a 60,000 foot store. It may get you a regional player who doesn't have the same strict demographic tied to metrics performance, because they're not as large, they're not as sophisticated in their site selection. Some of these branded retailers, remember, they have hundreds, if not thousands of units.
Oh, sure.
And so they have a lot of data to examine when they look at areas to say, will that store, if placed here, replicate what this one does that has similar patterns, spending patterns, people, and demographics? And when those answers are not in alignment, they typically pass on those things. And our challenge here is that while the population numbers have grown significantly in this region, and as I pointed out earlier, there's been a shift in the demographics, largely because of some of the stuff that's happening in Sussex with retirement, and an influx of people to that part of the state has made it more central to the state's population. But when you move to the north and you take the same 10, 20, and 30-minute drive time data sets, you're always in more affluence and density of population. We're not as dense here. So our opportunities exist from the standpoint of there's data that shows we're underserved, clearly, because we all go outside of the area for some things. But the business attraction strategy to address that gap needs to be very strategic and focused. And you got to be in the market to find out who is out there that's looking for markets that behave like this, and then show them that the potential for that exists. There are grocers, branded grocers, regionally branded grocers like Weiss Markets, that's much more comfortable in a rural area that's transitioning. So I don't know, I have a camper in Lancaster, and we go to a Weiss pretty frequently there, and it's really active, really busy. They're not, they know how those markets will behave relative to their business model. So I think it bodes well. It's good opportunity. But the trick of it all is courting the right people.
And is that based on drive time statistics, or is that based on hard statistics from the census for who is here now?
It's a combination of both.
It's a combination. It shows market trends, because some of this data is mine. In my old life, for instance, I managed shopping malls, large shopping malls. So 2 million square foot buildings with maybe 300 businesses under one roof. Because my deal structure with those businesses reflected a minimum rent and a percentage rent, my percentage rent couldn't be determined unless I knew their sales. So every lease in those shopping center leases has a sales reporting requirement. So I knew dollar for dollar what they were doing, because it was how I determined if I was getting a piece of it. So some of the data is actually real data. Others are, they'll take an area and say, okay, in the category of general merchandise, when we get reporting real data, it's coming out to $400 a foot. So we'll impute that $400 to some of the places that are sending general merchandise where we don't know their specific numbers. So it's been massaged and derived based on real data. So it's trending and what we think it is based on the best information available.
Thank you.
And take the gas station one. So gas station showing a really huge opportunity, for instance, $64 million worth of demand and only $20 million. We've had quite a few gas. So Wawa is going to be building gas pumps at off Paddock Road. You know, they're in the final stages. They submitted a construction plan. So hopefully this time next year, we're going to have gas pumps at the North Smyrna Wawa. We've had a couple of other gas station retailers looking at us. And they're not just looking at this data and the census data. They're also looking at DelDOT publishes how many people actually travel the roadway. So they do periodically, they do their own surveys, which are published online to the public. And they let you know how many cars go down a particular roadway on a daily basis. They do a series of surveys every year, which they use that data to say, because certain convenience stores, gas stations, they all use that data to say, I want a certain number of cars going past me on a daily basis.
And do the beach traffic statistics help us at all?
I don't think so.
I don't have the very, very current numbers, but I can give you a sense that a lot of that 13 traffic is average daily is in the 29-30 range. 1,000, which is robust. But when the summer months hit, it can be 60 plus, which is why all that gas gets absorbed in the market.
Of course, a lot of that is local traffic that doesn't want to travel on Route 1.
Right.
So the locals go on 13
Right.
to avoid Route 1.
But those are outstanding numbers in terms of somebody that's trying to play the game of determining how much of that traffic they'll intercept in their business model. So it's a very robust, strong data set for vehicular traffic. Now, we also use this data not just for new business attraction, but just to give you a quick example, in the area of home furnishings, window treatments, as I recall, and other home furnishings showed an opportunity. If I were talking to Karen and Wally about that data, I might be saying, hey, do we want to drill down into what window treatments are and what's really available here? And does that seem like something that isn't a big stretch for you to consider bringing in as part of your existing business. So sometimes these gaps and this data can be used to bring in just a different level of inventory. It puts different spin on a current business owner's thinking to say, am I missing an opportunity? Am I leaving anything on the table? Am I allocating in my brick and mortar the floor area that's best served for all the categories of merchandise I sell? Shifting on a strategy might be something that is useful. I remember I had a hardware store go out in one market, and a shoe repair guy picked up all the key making that the hardware guy had. So there would have been a hole in the market with the key making from the hardware store going dark, but the shoe repair guy picked it up. In fact, he bought the hardware store guy's equipment and then drew about $80,000 or $90,000 in key cutting in the course of a year. So you can follow the data and use it a little creatively as well.
Some of the categories, if you scroll down, we're not going to go through each one, but there's some categories where we have actually a lot more supply than we do demand. There are a couple ones, and you could recognize them fairly easily. The tobacco stores is one. There's a surplus of $11.5 million for tobacco stores. There's a similar surplus for liquor stores. One of the things to keep in mind is that these are all independent businesses. Those are independent small businesses. Those business owners or those entrepreneurs are not looking at this data. They're going from a feeling like, I think there's a market here and there's a space available that I can afford, and I'd like to set up my own smoke shop or liquor store or something like that. So those are some things to keep in mind, but use that to your advantage as well. So if you look at because of an independent business is not going to look at this data. Think of like a Jack's on Main, or think of a Yarn Maven, Sue Shimamura, or Mike Rasmussen at the Painted Stave. They don't necessarily look at this data. They look at outside things like, is this a good community to live in? Is this a nice place to raise my kids? Is the quality of life nice? Is this a neat building that I could locate my building in? You talk to the owner of Jack's on Main, he talks about, man, this is just an awesome building to be able to, to put a restaurant in. So those are other things that come into play that we can take advantage of in terms of being able to attract independent entrepreneurs. That can we create a sense of place? Can we create a really neat and engaging community that people want to move to? And be able to provide an atmosphere so that somebody can renovate a business and it can look nice and suit their needs. So.
And retailers like Sue provide more than just a commodity called yarn. They provide an experience that's unmatched by a larger retail format that could always beat her all day long on price.
A Michaels.
A Michaels could beat her all day long on price and on some things or all things. But what Michaels can't do is what she does, which is provide a place for people to come from as far as 60 miles away and hang out for half a day and talk yarn, spin yarns, because that's what she does.
And she does classes and all
and
these sort of things
classes.
that you're not going to get a Michaels.
Yeah. So that layer of experience to the providing of whatever good and or service it makes such a market distinction that it creates a very, very stable and interesting business that's part of the fabric of, the downtown.
Page. The one thing I did want to point out, which I was actually really surprised, you can find pharmacies. You find, that's actually on the first page. On the first page.
Health, right there.
Health and personal. So just go down to the bottom of the first page.
There you go.
So this actually really surprised me. So when it comes to pharmacies and drugstores, there's a demand of, a little over 33 million. We're actually providing 41.5 million an existing supply. Now, this is before the closure of Rite Aids, the 2 Rite Aids. Now, the 2 Rite Aids in Smyrna did not close because of this. You know, that was a national bankruptcy and closure. But that's just something to keep in mind, that even though we're a growing community and it may perceive that we don't really have many options to be able to get your pharmacies prescriptions filled, we're actually showing a pretty decent surplus. So the chances of us, you know, it would kind of be nice to be able to track a CVS or something like that. They're going to look at this and say, probably not.
Now, what you can do though is look at sometimes those independents who go deep into things that maybe the brands don't. And my best example of that is in the area of compounding. There are some drugs that are actually made on site, compounded on site, that there's a demand for that isn't provided for by other branded
And if you talk to Dr. T at Focus, you know, what they're doing to be able to differentiate themselves from the chains is offering diabetes counseling, yoga services, farm to table, so that they can actually survive in this really cutthroat market. So, was there, the only other thing, if you want to talk about, is we have a lot of demand and opportunities that's not being met in the 10-minute drive time. But if you want to talk about 20-minute drive time, you know how that's almost inverted.
Does drive time balance us to them and them to us, or just us to them? Other resources?
It's all within the same geography, 10, 20, or 30. And it's think of demand as what people here are buying. And then think of supply as what people here are selling.
And also think about it, where are people in this community working? So we are generally a bedroom community, okay? More people go out to work than come to Smyrna to work. So most people are working either in Dover, or they're working in northern Newcastle County, or they're working in southern Pennsylvania or South Jersey. So that affects, just think about your own commute. If you're driving down south from Wilmington, you might stop somewhere else to shop on your way home.
Right.
So those things come into play.
Can I ask, are we also looking at the time of day as far as driving?
This isn't time of day data.
That's more of a traffic
Yeah, that's
analysis that gives you day of week and time of day. And that gets very interesting to look at when you're really looking at like traffic numbers on 13 and really trying to understand, are you maximizing the opportunities for that? And DelDOT gives really good live information about that. You can get that pretty readily.
So this data, to answer your question, looks at the total demand for an entire year of this trade area, which 10-minute drive time, which is a little over 30,000 people. This is how much they spend in a year on each one of these items, each one of these categories. So it's year-long data, and some of it is real data, some of it's estimated data, because they have hard data and sometimes it's estimated. So, any other questions?
So what about unique items like a farmer's market that we don't have? That I know people who will drive all the way to Dover for Spencer's, or all the way up to Middletown for, but we don't have that in our quaint little town, which is exactly what you expect in a quaint little town.
One thing, I've dealt with this before. I worked in agricultural marketing before. It's counterintuitive. Rural communities have a difficult time having successful farmers markets in many cases, because the purchasing power of those communities is typically much lower. So if I am a vegetable grower, you know, outside of Clayton or outside of Smyrna, they're going to want to sell at the farmers market that they can get the most bang for their buck. And they're going to say, I'm going to drive to Annapolis or even to DC, because those people are wealthier and they can afford, I can charge more prices than if I sell in Harrington or Smyrna. It's not necessarily fair sometimes, but that's the algorithm that a lot of farmers do. So unless you're an affluent community, so a place like Chestertown, for instance, has a very successful farmers market, but they're also a very affluent retirement community. A lot of really wealthy people that own $1 million homes. And they have the disposable income to be able to purchase those things.
The other thing is with that product, there's a ticking clock on the shelf life. So they've got to sort of make their bones while they can, you know, with the population.
But if you have a really dynamic farmers market manager, you know, you can make it work, you know, if they have a good relationship with the growers. But it's an uphill battle in a community like Smyrna, which isn't as affluent, and the farmers aren't going to be able to make as good of a return.
And one thing that the state legislature did recently was allowed the craft distillers and brewers and wineries to sell their products at farmers market to add another layer of that experiential thing. So if you were going to execute on something that locally, the more you layer in things other than fresh produce that look like experience, the more attractive that might be, because you're going to import a customer and affluence, a density of customers and affluent customers from other areas to do those things.
And that's why I'm thinking of Spencer's or the Middletown Farmers Market, because you get other things there. You get.
Are you talking about the Amish? Are you talking about the Amish market?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get homemade furniture,
Mhm.
homemade
Oh, yeah.
gifts, special food from the Amish that you don't get in Wegmans or.
Yeah, and that really takes a dynamic manager who has a relationship with the growers and with the retailers to be able to do that. You know, they tried that at the Harris manufacturing site, and I don't want to say they failed spectacularly, but it's still empty, right?
We tried to brick it. We tried to brick it.
But it's you know, because there are really good locations that have done it really well. If you go to Easton has a really good one of those. Middletown's has a really good example. There's what's the one up in, is it Aston or Boothwyn? Boothwyn has a really good long-standing one.
Yeah.
And they're not open every day. So.
No, yeah, typically Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
And Saturday.
So with what we've done so far, what we know from what we have in front of us, what are the next steps for us with this?
This is an informative. This is, and I'm going to go through a couple of other things. This is so that you have some realistic expectations in terms of the types of businesses that are likely going to come here. This is what the data is saying we have an actual demand for.
Does this play into the KEP site selector information that we?
No, that's different. So that's for, the KEP site selector is for industrial properties.
Okay.
So this is for retail.
Okay.
As a general rule, KEP does not delve into the retail.
Okay.
Yes,
I
sir.
have a question. Okay, my question is, what about a large ShopRite? Because the closest ShopRite is up in Barre. And I will tell you, in New Jersey, every single town has a ShopRite. It is mega bucks.
Yeah.
And if you put in one that has more than what they used to have, I will tell you, the traffic in this town would be unbelievable. And I have always said this because we are from New Jersey, and we used to shop in a ShopRite that was about 40 years old. And then the town of Old Bridge decided that they were going to put in a very large housing development. And in front of that development, they were going to have like a shopping mall. And in that shopping mall was a mega ShopRite. You cannot even imagine the amount of traffic into that store. And if you had one here, I know that up in there, they are so busy up in there. It is unbelievable. And I'll tell you, eventually, most likely, If we don't do it first, Middletown will be.
They have to want us as much as we want them, though.
The,
Problem.
it's not a matter of us wanting them or reaching out to them. That's really not how the retail market works for retailers. So they're gonna be looking at this data. So all the retailers are gonna be looking at this data in terms of whether or not to expand. But each retailer has their own market that their corporate leadership sets standards for. They want to expand in a particular market or don't expand, or they don't want to expand at all, or they may want to contract. So the those sort of variables are going to come into play. ShopRite, you know, I know there's a very good one on 896 in Newark, just south of Newark.
Yeah, that's why you're there. We
there.
had nothing down here.
But the
South.
a retailer has to be able to, you know, when I go to what's called an ICSC conference, which is essentially your retailers all get in the same room, and retailers that show up are the ones that are interested in expanding. And some of them are interested in expanding, but may not be wanting to expand in our particular market. They want to be closer to Philadelphia or closer to Wilmington. There's a whole list of variables. Along with that, I'm glad you brought up the whole shopping center thing in terms of some of these, think of all of the specialty type retail stores. Oftentimes that will come when a developer is able to secure a tenant.
Yeah.
So think of, everybody's been to Target in Middletown, okay? So that field, the Ramunos have owned that property for 25 years. And that's laid vacant. It's been tilled for 25 years. They waited until they could secure Target. All of those retailers that are now being built, they had signed up years ago, but those retailers were not going to be built without an anchor tenant.
Well,
So-
ShopRite is definitely an anchor.
Oh, absolutely. So typically an anchor tenant is a grocery store.
So the other thing just to keep in mind is, and it's not about what, I mean, we'd love to have ShopRite come look at this. But in New Jersey, as an example, the average density of New Jersey's population is between 1,800 and 2,200 people per square mile. And
Not up
here,
in Sussex, New Jersey.
but
Not up in Sussex, New Jersey.
what is it there?
There's a ShopRite, a large ShopRite, not too big, in Hamburg. The next town
Right, I'm
up
familiar.
is Sussex, right, Larry? Right. And we're talking, this is farmland.
Yeah.
And they put that in there. That ShopRite up there is loaded with people because people come from all the way from New York, which is close to Port Jervis and Matamoros, and they come over to get their shopping in that ShopRite now. And into New York, where Warwick is, high-end living.
Yep.
They
I'm very
come
familiar.
to
I
the
did
ShopRite.
7 of those ShopRites in that area. And they pro forma a $60 million store. And if it didn't do 60, they thought it was a failure. So
so
those,
Right. So in interest of moving on, because it's almost 8 o'clock and our presentation is going longer than expected, can we move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the,
Jim had,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jim had a question. We have one more question.
Question. I haven't seen the report, but just from hearing it spoken about, seems like an exciting opportunity. It's wonderful to be able to see what, you know, large businesses can see as opportunities here. And my big question would be, is how have towns or other cities used this information to attract components into their community that is underrepresented or is not represented? How could we take an active role to say, if we just passively sit back and we let businesses make those decisions on their own without us providing some incentive or guidance, maybe it's not in the town's best interest to have both Rite Aids and 3 other businesses become tobacco and vape shops in the town. Maybe it would be better for the town to find ways to explore taking this information to say, we've got a gap here. It would strengthen our town and to build a community. and would help build the town that we wanted to develop or grow into with the vision. So the question is, what could we do as a town to use this information to kind of shape how the future goes?
Yeah, to go to them.
So when a retailer contacts me, so whether that's we just got contacted by Seven Brew. Applebee's is going to be applying for site plan approval. We're going to get an Applebee's. When they contact me, they've reviewed all this data. They've already made a decision that we fit their criteria. So there really isn't a lot of incentives that we can offer that's going to bring them here. It's going to be, we either have what they're looking for or they're not. For an independent business, if you're looking at how can I get an independent brewery or distillery, that's when we have to do kind of marketing to individuals that could help get somebody to go into a space.
But I guess the question is, are there any opportunities where we could do an outreach, where we could advertise out into a certain segment or a certain area to say, come to Smyrna, consider coming to Smyrna for A, B, C, or D?
So for instance, I go to the, what's called the International Shopping Center, Council of Shopping Centers. They have 2 regional events and I go to at least one of them a year. And, I take some demographic data and I sit around and I talk to the different retailers. But am I going to change their decision? 9 times out of 10, no. They might say, oh, maybe I didn't think about Smyrna. But what I usually find out from that is that another retailer is looking at us and I might get a call in 6 or 12 months. So I knew about Planet Fitness 2 years before they called me. So when I went there, I spoke to them and says, oh yeah, we're going to sign a lease on this. We're just working out the details with the property owner. So it's really helpful for us to be able to know what's coming down the pike. But there's not a lot I can do, or anybody in the town can do, to say, we're not going to be able to call up Texas Roadhouse and say, what is it going to take to locate in our town? There's not a lot we can do.
I do have this one quick question. When it comes to like businesses that come to you that are looking to come in and say it's a smoke shop, I'm just pulling out because we seem to have a lot of those. Do you show them? Do you relate to them somehow, some way that maybe we already have an abundance of this in our town and it may not be something that would be profitable to you? Like, do you use that? You know what I'm saying?
So that's another question in terms of, when a business comes and wants to locate, say in Smyrna Mark Shopping Center or at a vacant building on 13 or downtown, they have to get what's called a certificate of zoning compliance. And essentially what I have to do, actually one of my staff members does, is they go down the list of allowable uses in that particular zoning district. And if that particular use is permitted, I can't deny them. So you have the ability to prohibit certain uses in certain zoning districts. So if the town wanted to prohibit smoke shops, say in the downtown district, that's something you could do. Are you going to prohibit smoke shops townwide? It's just not going to happen. That's a function of the market that I can't handle, unfortunately. So if it's a permitted use in the zoning ordinance, I have to approve it. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, but I guess you don't give them insight, like
They should be able to do their own.
research.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have to play a fine line in saying I can't tell someone.
Most business savvy people know what they need to do to put
Okay.
themselves somewhere where they're going to be successful.
All right, I just was curious
Yeah.
how you might use that information to kind of guide potential.
You have the ability to exclude certain uses in certain zoning districts. So if you want to, and we've done that with massage parlors.
Right.
You kind of, or retail, or marijuana facilities, we're not permitted downtown, for instance. They're only permitted in certain zones. You can do that. You can tailor the zoning district. But, doing an outright prohibition and saying that you
Well,
can't,
I wouldn't say. It's like a guidance.
or
All right.
that's something I really can't do. One thing I wanted to talk about there is the National Main Street Center provided some data, part of training that I did last year. They use data from a service called Esri. Esri is the consulting firm that creates all the maps. They go through, it says CTW 2024. If you go down through here, I'm not going to go through everything, but what it does tell you, especially on sheet 3, it outlines annual household spending by category, annual lifestyle spending by category. That's really interesting stuff in terms of how how the residents in this town are spending goods. And then if you go to the second page, they, a neat analysis that they do, that again, some of the site consultants are looking at, is they're looking at what's called tapestry segments. So I have it on the screen, Esri put together and grouped, did what's called segmentation data they created 60 different options, 60 different types, and they classified us as a Middleburg. Okay, which if you go through, you can click on the next page. This actually matches our demographic data pretty well. So that looks at, like wealth index compared nationally. How does a community like Smyrna compare to other communities across the country? The density. Look at what, when Rick talked about the density of 1,000 or 2,000, we're at the lower end in the grand scheme of things, even though we have a lot of people that move to town. In the grand scheme of things, Kent County, Delaware is still a relatively low density population. Go to the next page. That shows where this demographic group is kind of located nationally. So you see Kent County is located in similar areas to like York County, Pennsylvania, or Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Our spending habits are similar to those groups. Very different from does that go down? No, go down. You can turn that off and then go to the PowerPoint. One that starts with the
The worksheet and copy of one of those measures. Those are the four that you gave me.
You should have one that you found.
I'll open them.
Oh. You talking about this one? Yeah.
Yeah. So for this one, I want to go over, this is the, there's an 11 by 17 sheet, which compares all the, neighboring municipalities from across the state, everywhere from Seaford, Milford, Dover. Okay. I want you to look, I did this data my own. But so think about where they're building shopping centers in the state. So they're not building a ton of shopping centers in the state of Delaware anymore or elsewhere, especially big box stores. So think about Middletown. Middletown has Target, and that whole shopping center has Sprouts, and it has a whole series of retailers that goes with that. The one Wegmans in the state of Delaware was recently constructed right off Barley Mill Plaza, right off of Route 100. That's in Greenville, to the very top end of that spectrum. And you may have heard a lot of press about the approximately 1.5 million square feet of retail they're looking to build by the beach. Okay. So I want you to be able to look at me, and I essentially put everyone in order by median household income with another series of economic indicators on this chart. We are, for the state of Delaware, we're not only the geographic center of the state, we're just slightly below average when it comes to all of the economic indicators. We're significantly better than Dover and even Milford, and especially Seaford. Our median household income's over $20,000 more than Seaford's is, for instance. But when you compare us to, say, Middletown, even though they're only 15 minutes up the road, it's a difference in median household income of $45,000. It's a 50% increase in the median household income in Middletown than what it is in Smyrna. And that plays a significant part in what retailers are going to look at us, because their purchasing power is 50% more for us, even if it's the same amount of rooftops. And in their case, they have more rooftops than we do. And if you're looking at Greenville, $139,000, they are twice, their median household income is twice of what we are. And
60.
We're about 70, we're 70,000. So if you're looking at, are we going to attract a Wegmans? Wegmans is looking at a very particular market, and that market is not for median household income of $50,000. So when I meet with retailers at say an ICSC, so many of the retailers, especially, think of any food retailer, they will not talk to you if you don't if your median household income isn't $100,000 more a year. they're not gonna look at you because they have an arbitrary limit that they are only concentrating in areas with a certain median household income and a certain number of people within a 5 or a 10-minute drive time. So I don't want you to feel bad that Smyrna is not getting the same thing that Middletown isn't. Middletown has more rooftops, but more importantly, the purchasing power that's located in the Middletown area is just so significantly higher than what we have here in Smyrna. We're much better compared to Dover, but we're not nearly at what Middletown is. And you need to have some expectations that just because they're getting Target, we're not doing anything wrong. We're never going to get Target. And you just need to understand that. And as much as we may want it, we're just not going to get a Target. We're not going to get a Wegmans or something like that. And what's also lastly important, I'll close out with, for this part of it is, if you go to some of these conferences and you talk to the retailers, the big box retailers aren't building. So JCPenney's, Macy's, all of these larger retailers, unless they have a grocery component like Target, are not building at all in any market. Okay. And in many cases, they're closing stores nationwide. So even though we have a gap or an opportunity, it doesn't mean we're actually going to get it because certain retail categories just aren't expanding nationwide.
The way those nationals work is they have something called opens to buy, which is in a budget year for them. They forecast how many stores they want to open, or they forecast how many they're going to receive if they're closing markets in some areas of their business. To Jeremy's point, I do know that Costco is building, but Costco is looking for very, very, very specific densities of population. If they did another one, it probably in Delaware, it would probably be in the north, like almost on the PA border, because it could pull from those Pennsylvania demographics before the Costco and Philadelphia near IKEA, but it's and they are driven by a grocery component, so that's Jeremy's absolutely right. Those large box formats are really rethinking what they're doing. They're looking at their real estate as distribution centers almost as much as points of sale, because they feel like that's the way the future is going to be.
And what happened at Simon's Corner is likely going to continue in other shopping centers here in town. So in Simon's Corner, when this was approved back in 2006, originally there was going to be 176,000. I believe it was going to be a Bass Pro at one time. It was, they were looking at a Home Depot, and then there was going to be a 60,000 square foot grocery store in the back, kind of like behind where Aldi's is. The market crashed. They didn't do anything. And in today's market, they're not building that. But what is making a successful shopping center is introducing residential component to shopping centers. So that is what's something that you're going to see. And what we have there, they have approvals to build 270 apartments. And the retailers are understanding that that's a huge win-win for both the residents of that community.
Is that like a village community?
Yeah. So like when they build that 270 apartments at Simon's Corner, they're going to be able to walk right across the street to Aldi's or to Walgreens with that urgent care. So it's a win-win, and that you're going to see more of that.
The other thing I'll just mention, I know we want to respect time, but to the gentleman's question earlier about what you could be doing and what other communities do. The Bass Pro that Jeremy is referring to, that Wittig was looking at in 2010 at the shopping center down the road. Bass Pro ultimately went to Hamburg in PA with the unit that they had an open to buy for. So that's the geographic spread that they look at for attracting, and the community there incentivized that deal out of a tool we didn't have available in Delaware, which was sales tax. And interestingly, they promised a certain return as an incentive to Bass Pro out of taxes when the taxes hit certain thresholds. they never hit those thresholds and never got the incentive. So it was an empty prize that they negotiated for that, I think the lessons learned for some of those big boxes is if it's not cash, they're not counting on it because they've had that promise before and the rug get pulled out from them. So they have very, as Jeremy's been underlined, they have very specific criteria and they usually stay with them. The only thing I think Jeremy sold himself a little short on is in terms of what Smyrna has been doing. For years, I know there's finger on the pulse of what developers are doing, and that's invaluable. He has a great relationship with Ramuno's in terms of sharing information about what's on the horizon for those folks. And Rob Whittick is probably one of the most active brokers on the commercial scene right now in the state with DSM. So he's a friend of Smyrna. He's got ties here and investment here, and just keeping track and tabs on those folks and their thinking is really important to hear what they're and to use them as a sounding board. We're thinking about this. Tell us why we can't have it. Tell us why we could have it. Tell us what we would need to do to get it. They're great pieces of information for that's so okay.
But we're gonna move on to the so the if I can get it. It wants to play. There we go. So Tori also wanted me to talk about this, and I believe the mayor was looking at this data in terms of, so we get a lot of complaints, and there's a lot of, both from residents and from businesses downtown that there's not enough parking. So I was able to go out and do a parking inventory in our downtown. Now, what I use as a benchmark in terms of, I'm not going to do it in the residential neighborhoods. Essentially, the area shown in pink, that's the Central Commercial Zoning District. It's essentially the area from where Delaware Cardiology was on North Main Street down to the south, going all the way to the Smyrna Health and Wellness Center, and then essentially from Cobalt Manor in the east to Bryson's Funeral Home, Bryson's and Matthews. So that's the area, and I broke it up into two different parts, looking at both parking lots and on-street parking. And I did this at 3 different days and at 3 different times of the year. And I printed out all the sheets for you in this thing that you can take home if you have questions. So for parking lots, if they're shown in red, that means they're a private parking lot. If they're shown in blue, that is a public parking lot. So the blue ones, there are 4 public parking lots. You have where the Duck Creek Regional Library is. You have Town Hall here has public parking spaces right behind us. The L is the Opera House parking lot. And then behind the Delaware Pharmacist Society, even though some of it is privately owned, we maintain it. We have an agreement with it. It's public parking in that area. There's a number of parking spots there. To be able to interpret what in terms of what we did, you have the total is the number of spaces in that particular parking lot. Okay, and then at different times of the day and at different days. So on October the 23rd, we went out from 9 to 10 to survey every single one of these parking lots. Okay, and it shows the number of occupied spaces out of a total, and then a percent occupied, which is shown with the pie chart symbol, the gray and the green pie chart symbol. So that what should kind of jump out at you in terms of, as a general rule, in most of downtown, we actually don't, most of the parking lots are actually half full, maybe 60% full. But if you look, there is one area, one part of town where we have, and you can probably guess, where the parking lots are generally full most of the time during business hours. So at the Smyrna Health and Wellness Center, they have 150 marked parking spots at that facility. And we took it at both in the morning and the afternoon, and generally they were in the 90% range. And generally those few open parking spots were generally handicapped that weren't necessarily occupied. So there were very few in that particular parking lot. And then across the street, especially during school hours, the school district utilizes the Opera House parking lot. And customers in the Health and Wellness Center also occupy that parking lot. But once you do go up into the Duck Creek Regional Library parking lot, there is 113 parking spots, both in front of the library itself and then closer to South Street. There's a huge concentrate. Most of the parking spaces are actually down there. Depending on what time of the day, we went again twice during business hours. You were at, like the 60% level, 60 to 70%. So there were a fair number of open spots in that parking lot. So the Smyrna Health and Wellness Center is obviously the one that is driving a lot of the parking shortage in this area. So that is a cue that the town needs to be thinking about creative ways in which to be able to provide parking in that particular area, or work with the individual the individual service providers in that building, that their employees need to park a little further away and allow their customers and patients to park in behind the building, which can be challenging. That can be challenging at times. So at 2 and 2:30, it's very similar data again, the Smyrna Health and Wellness building, their parking lot is the most full. Behind PNC, the old Citizens Bank parking lot is generally not completely full. There's typically a few open spots, but that one is generally fairly full. The rest of them are, somewhere in the middle. And then once we go to 5 to 6 p.m., once business hours are over, you'll notice that the parking lots clear out very precipitously. Not surprising. So that means that you're not getting a lot of residents that are parking in these parking lots. Now, in addition to doing parking lots, we also did on-street parking. So what we had to do, this required some estimation, and we had to go out there with a measuring wheel. So we take each segment in the downtown, the central commercial zoning district, and in some cases, they actually had marked spots on the street, and that made it really easy to count. In other cases, depending on the block, you didn't have marked spots, but you had signs that said parking was permitted. So I would have to go out, and if it was a 200-foot stretch, I would divide it by 20 feet or 22 feet. That's the length of an on-street parking space to be able to say that there are 10 available parking spots, and then count how many cars were actually in that area. So we did that for every street segment in the central commercial district. And as you can see, South Main Street is the only area where South Main Street and East Commerce are really your two areas with the most on-street parking demand. And that's kind of two different reasonings for that. South Main Street is, you have your retail businesses like Sayers, and then you have your the Smyrna Health and Wellness Center, where you have patients coming in and parking on street. On East Commerce Street, most of those are residences, especially like the Colonial Hotel. The Colonial Hotel have individuals who don't necessarily work during the day, so they might be 10 cars out on East Commerce Street taking up parking spots that, those are people that just don't work during the day, for better or for worse. But compared to, I've worked in other municipalities and been to a lot of other municipalities that have really vibrant downtowns. Just a few weeks ago, I went to Culpeper, Virginia. It's one of my favorite towns. If you go down to the Piedmont of Virginia, it has a Amtrak train station, so a lot of very affluent folks from DC live there and work remotely. It's about, and go into DC once a week or something, or twice a week or something like that. Or if you go to a place like Middleburg or Warrington in the Piedmont, these are places that have, if you think about our downtown, we have a number of vacant storefronts. Okay, if you go to a place like Culpeper, they have 4 or 5 blocks in a row where every single business storefront is occupied, and not only occupied, but very vibrant and busy. And you have a number of restaurants in that area. They're on street. You could not find on-street parking within 4 or 5 blocks. Okay, in a place like that, you would be hard pressed to find parking in the parking lots. I mean, you would just have to walk 5 or 6 blocks because it's a destination downtown. If you go to Newark for a slightly different reason, you have the same thing. You will find out what finding how difficult it is to find a parking spot if you have to go to Main Street in Newark, for instance. But so in South Main Street, we have a parking challenge. And we're working, Tori and I and Jason, we're working together to try to find a solution to help the Smyrna Health and Wellness Building. We have 150 people that work in that building. Okay, it's a great downtown employer. It's actually among any building in town, it's the second largest, or the second most expensive building in town. And it provides a lot of medical services to the community, a whole host of outpatient services. So we obviously want to accommodate them and to be able to provide opportunities for them to grow. The third floor is still vacant. They're looking to put a women's health center, comprehensive women's health center up there. But to be able to do that, if you're going to bring in 30 new employees and perhaps guess how many new patients, we are going to have to get strategic and be able to potentially provide some more parking in that part of downtown. So want to be able to provide that. This is being put together for the DD plan that we're required to do. But Tori thought it'd be a good idea to bring this to your attention just so that you have access to the data. And I printed that out just in case you could take it home. And if you have questions, you can give me a call or you'll be able to answer questions from constituents. So I'd be able to.
Any questions or discussion?
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you very much.
All right, very good.
Item 9, public comments. Do we have anyone who wishes to make public comments at this time?
I just, Vicky Blair, I just want to wish you all a happy holiday season. However you celebrate, have a safe new year. Enjoy the next 2 weeks with your family. It's important. And thank you for doing what you've done for this town, because whether the people out there recognize it or not, you guys have worked really hard to get us in a better spot. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just state your name.
So this is our last meeting for the year. So I'm gonna pray you all out. Father God, we come from where we are, Lord, to you. And we ask, Lord, that as is council and every person in this room, and even our whole township, Lord, we are all members to come together in unity, which is the slogan that our wonderful mayor has put together in her heart. So I pray, Father God, that you give us wisdom, courage, and strength, Lord, with much discernment, with understanding. May your will be done for this town and every person in this town. May we always look for the good, but yet always be mindful that the Holy Spirit that is in us sometimes needs to be recognized and addressed. And we thank you for everyone in this room, Lord. I pray so much good health on them, physically, mentally, emotionally, and above all, Lord, for a sound mind and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we have a second to adjourn the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned, 8:28. Thank you very much for coming out and have a wonderful holiday, everyone. Drive safely.
Yes, indeed.
For staff, thank